So, pipeheads, what do you want to talk about? Let me preface this by saying I love Pink Floyd, baby. Pink Floyd is one of my favorite bands of all time. With Roger Waters, David Gilmour, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright all in the front. Albums like Atom Heart Mother, Metal, Obscured by Clouds, The Big Four of Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, The Wall, all got me through the pandemic, and hell, I own a lot of these on vinyl. A few weeks ago, I went to watch Pink Floyd live at Pompeii 1972 in IMAX. And no joke, one of my favorite theater experiences of all time. And a month that already had a pretty major one. Not only the movie got a re-release in theaters, the concert got a remaster and it's available on all music streaming platforms. It was already on streaming through a set of collections that the band did in the late 2010s, mainly of stuff before Dark Side of the Moon. But that version has its fans and its non-fans. I think it's fine. Maybe a little heavy on the cymbals, but the one problem I have is that they combine both parts of echoes and cutting out the fade of the end of part 1. But the 2025 remaster fixes that problem. But before we fully talk about the music, I think it's best to talk about the movie itself. The film came to director Adrian Maben as an idea to have Pink Floyd's music playing on pieces of art. Eventually this spiraled into the idea of filming a concert in an empty amphitheater in Rome. After Maben visited the amphitheater in search of his lost passport, the art idea would still be intact, but it'd be less than originally thought of. So he contacted the band's manager, and thus Live at Pompeii came to be. Compared to the other theatrical Pink Floyd project, this was less of a war zone between creatives and more of a collaborative effort, since the rest of the band was on board with the idea. The film was mostly filmed at the amphitheater for 4 days, and the performances were Echoes, Saucerful of Secrets, and One of These Days. The rest of the film was done in a studio in Paris, mainly because filming for way more days at Pompeii would have cost way too much. My favorite fun fact is that during the filming at Pompeii, they had so little power that they had to use an extension cord connected to the town hall to help suffice the band's need. Eventually, filming was done, and the film got edited and was sent around film festivals. Eventually, a theatrical run was planned, but Mabel thought the film was too short, so he added BTS footage he got from when he visited the band while they were recording Dark Side. The footage was enough, and the film was re-released in theaters. It did pretty well once it got to North America, but since around this time Dark Side came out and became Dark Side of the freaking Moon, it didn't do as well as it could have, since it was mainly an older version of the band before they hit their peak. Once it hit home media, it became a cult classic. Surprisingly, the film never got a release on vinyl, the format that Pink Floyd is synonymous with. And it's strange, bootlegs exist but never an official version. Later, the film got a special edition release in 2002 called The Director's Cut. And man, I am not a fan of this version. It has this dated CGI in it, and it looks really jarring. Not only that, it combined both versions of Echoes together, which literally distorts the best part of the album. Oh, and also it was stretched to 16:9, which looks really ugly, so I'm not a huge fan of the special edition re-release. Insert George Lucas joke for the 40-year-olds watching.
And I want you to get out of this office right now.
Overall, the 2002 version was not good, but thankfully it was saved by the fact that it came with the original version. And in 2020, the film was briefly re-released on YouTube during the pandemic on Pink Floyd's YouTube channel for only 24 hours, which sucks because this should have been available a lot longer, and considering this was their gift to help people get through the pandemic, it sucks that it couldn't be available for longer than a day. And also it was the 2002 director's cut. In 2024, David Gilmour sold the rights of Pink Floyd to Sony Music, and there was mixed feelings for this. On the one hand, This was obviously done so that Gilmore can be done with the band and tell Roger to bug off. On the other is that Pink Floyd is no longer owned by anyone on the band and made the future of the band's discography ambiguous. Then on February 2025, we got news of the first major thing Pink Floyd related that Sony was going to do. They were going to re-release Live at Pompeii in 4K and on IMAX, and a week later on Blu-ray. And that concert was getting a proper release on both CD and vinyl. And not only that, the film was going to be the 1974 version and not the 1972 version without the dark side stuff. And thankfully, not the 2002 cut. And then the band's social media released footage of the concert in the remaster, and it looked good. And apparently this was not done with AI. Poor Allen Iverson.
We talking about practice, man.
But yeah, no artificial intelligence upscaling. Like a certain other band that did upscaling with AI. But not only that, the footage looked... A lot of people said that the band looked like they had jaundice, or they looked like the Simpsons. But look at the pictures of the band during this time, during the performance. And you'll see that's how the natural lighting was when they were recording in Pompeii. Then the day came, and the film finally came out, and man, it was so cool. You could see all the details of the band's instruments, the tobacco they chewed on, still on their teeth, and Roger Waters' pale ass face. When I watched the movie, I got my seats directly in the middle. This was my first time watching a film on IMAX, so I decided to do what I think was best, and man, it sounded so great. I have my nitpicks for sure, but overall, still one of my favorite film experiences of all time. I am not going into too much detail of the songs themselves, but here's an overview. The mixing for the concert was good, great even, but it could have been better. My problem, mainly when I watched it in theaters, being that in some of the songs, Roger Waters' bass playing is somewhat muted, at least compared to the rest of the band. Everyone else is live and ready, just Roger's part feels backseated. And I was able to figure out who owned which channel on the remaster, and it seems like Roger and Nick seems to be sharing the same ones. And considering that Pompeii is the Nick Mason highlight reel, it kinda kills Roger's part a bit. But in some songs, the bass is there, and it's primarily heard in Echoes Part 1. Back on the visual stuff, this movie really loves Nick Mason. A friend of mine asked me who went to see this because he loved watching concert movies, and asked if Nick Mason was the leader of the band because they love showing his face a lot, and he doesn't know Pink Floyd that much, only if he knew. During the movie, I was being a dork and mimicking Nick Mason's drumming style. And I'm mostly a guitarist, so yeah, I can safely say that this movie was filmed for the glory of Nick Mason. One thing I noticed when I was watching the movie is that there was parents and grandparents who brought their kids here. And while I don't think the movie is inappropriate outside of a few murals, I would never bring my kids to watch this in theaters because this shit was loud. Especially with parts of Careful with the Axe Eugene and Set the Controls. I feel like my kids would go deaf, with Roger screaming actually getting a few people in the theater to jump out of their seats. Saucer Full of Secrets was my personal favorite experience, mainly because when David got to his part of yelling, that shit gave me goosebumps. Not that slapping on the arm type goosebumps, but the all natural. My favorite part of the entire movie, honestly. One of these days is still goated, as always. It'll forever be the performance for Nick Mason. Mademoiselle Nobbs, or Seamus, got the whole crowd laughing and awing because, look at it, it's so cute. Everyone gave the dog a standing ovation because, man, that pooch killed it. And also, it's nice to see Richard Wright. Rest easy, man. Like I said before, this re-release had the BTS of the Dark Side of the Moon stuff. And seeing footage of the making of an album that's often considered the greatest album of all time is like seeing a monument constructed. And this is where the audience had a few pops in. The first one being when Nick Mason was constantly complaining that he wants his pie with no crust. He got so persistent that everyone laughed at the final bit of the joke. The second being when David Gilmour was talking about how Pink Floyd will forever be known as a drug band, which is true, but maybe they shouldn't have released music during the peak of pot usage. I'm kidding, of course. And finally, the album ends with Echoes Part 2, which contains so many of my favorite shots of the movie, and it's insane. A lot of these are poster materials for college dorm rooms. It has that aura to it, to be honest. And quite frankly, when I get my vinyl version, I'm gonna hang that poster up on my wall. I love looking at that. The song fades out and the movie ends. Man, what a ride. But a week after the IMAX release, the soundtrack came out and man, it sounds so good. It fixes some of the problems I've had with the IMAX release. But just to simply have the album on both streaming and on vinyl, it just hits like crack, you know? This release comes with the teaser version of Echoes Part 1 that they released both as a teaser for the movie and the soundtrack. It also comes with an unedited version of Saucerful, an alternative take of Careful with That Axe, Eugene. Overall, the re-release was great, but what hits like crack is the fact that it's on vinyl. I unfortunately don't have it right now because I want to get one from stores rather than online because I want to see it firsthand. But the assurance that the concert's on Blu-ray and vinyl is just the best feeling in the world. But yeah, this whole Pompeii re-release project was a huge success. The movie did well box office wise for being a limited release of 2 days, single screenings, being a re-release, and coming out the same time as Sinners. By the way, good movie. I'm assuming vinyl and streaming is going to help this one do better in terms of sales. For Pink Floyd's first release under Sony Music, they did a good job. Now let's hope they stick the landing with the Wish You Were Here 50th anniversary because man, Dark Side was done dirty with its 50th anniversary. For Pink Floyd's future stuff, let's pray for the best because this was pretty cool. Sorry this wasn't a retrospective video. Life got in the way and hopefully this shorter style video can suffice for the wait. I'll be upfront and say that the next retrospective is on White Pony by Deftones. Huge 180 from Chocolate and Cheese, but hey, I want it to be the best that it can be so that the wait would be worth it. Again, sorry for the long wait. I promise it's coming out sometime within the next few weeks, but I can't exactly promise it if, the whole world blows up. But yeah, I promise it'll come out around that time. So, bye, Pipeheads. Talk to you later. And careful with that axe. Later.